I'm ready to record, just if you want to give like a 3 count or something.
Three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to the channel with another collaboration. This time around, we have Foxcade from, well, the Foxcade channel. Foxcade, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Foxcade. My name's actually Shane, but I've gotten very used to people calling me either Fox or Foxcade. Make YouTube videos, mostly retrospective type videos, looking at the history behind games development and general analysis type videos, I guess is the best way to explain it. And then the occasional review slash op-ed, depending how you want to classify them. I don't know. I always feel it's weird classifying what I do, but that's the best way to describe it.
I gotcha. I gotta say, 100% most wholesome intro I've heard from someone yet. So anyways, Foxcade does do, I would like to say, more in-depth analysis of games, such as Devil May Cry 5, which is kind of segues into the conversation. The first time I found you was around E3 when Devil May Cry 5 got revealed for the first time, and you were talking with a Codex entry for the first time. Well, I guess it wasn't your first time.
Yeah. The mini podcast we did, mostly just talking about like our expectations now that it's been revealed.
Right, you guys had a lot of major points inside of there about what to expect from Devil May Cry 5, what we'll probably end up seeing, what we've seen in the past from previous games. But before we get more into Devil May Cry 5, what kind of, I kind of want to talk a little bit more like of your channel. Like, how did you get to where you are today?
So in terms of, I guess, starting the channel, it was mostly just a thing to have a creative outlet, just to like make things. I never really made it with the plans of it like blowing up in any way. It was just more like, I want to do this thing. And my first video that's no longer on the channel, if you want to see it, you can subscribe to my Patreon and you'll get in the thank you message. But it's basically a video where I kind of detail the history that led to us getting to Bayonetta. So and that actually starts with the Japanese horror movie, Sweet Home. And Sweet Home eventually led into a video game, and it's like a really old Famicom Japanese exclusive horror RPG that's basically the progenitor to survival horror, namely because when it was going to be remade in the PlayStation era, it was then turned into Resident Evil. And then Resident Evil eventually made Devil May Cry with the creation of 4, eventually morphing into Devil May Cry 1. And then Hideki Kamiya, who made Devil May Cry 1, made Bayonetta. So it's like you can kind of follow this little creative through line through history, connecting 80s Japanese horror movie to this over-the-top character action game in 2009. If you just kind of follow this connective thread. And I just was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to make a video about that because I don't see anyone else talking about that. And then I eventually just kept making stuff, and slowly my skills improved. Still always trying to improve. I'm not going to say that I don't have room to grow, and now here we are.
That's really unique. You know, you took something that not a lot of people were talking about, and you kind of put not only your own spin on it, but you brought it into the public light, because even I didn't know about that. That's kind of cool. Might need to go watch more of your videos on that sort of topic. And so do you plan on doing more stuff like that in the future? Or do you plan on branching out to different sort of, I guess, lines of gaming? Or is there anything else you're wanting to do?
So yeah, after I finished with the DMC retrospectives with DMC Devil May Cry, and of course like 5's coming out, and I'm going to talk about that. But I've been slowly kind of like pivoting to talking about other games and other genres, and I've always been talking about other games, but I want to do the same type of analysis I've been doing with the Devil May Cry games with other ones. I did one with Resident Evil 4 and Arkham Asylum, and what else recently? I recently was talking about the early access game Hades on the Epic Game Store.
Yep, I saw that video.
That was a really
good
cool one. If anybody's listened to this, I highly recommend checking out Hades if you get the chance. But basically, I have been continuing with that type of content. It's just I've been morphing it into what my retrospectives currently are, where it's half, I always hesitate to say a documentary, but it's the closest thing I can say to describe it, and then half analysis, where I spend a lot of time digging into the creation of a game, and then I also spend time just my own critical response to the game. And it's kind of this mix of the two.
Right. It's got, like, I would say half opinions and half non-biased analysis on some sort of situation, or I guess your case is like a retrospective on the old DMC games.
Yeah, and like who made them, and then what happened to them, and like how Itsuno took over, and then how Capcom decided they wanted to reboot the series, and then when we get 5, it'll be, okay, how do we get to the point where we went back to the series? Because even in video games, that's unprecedented for a series to just go, oh, we're going to try to reboot, and then, okay, people really didn't like that, we'll go back to 5. I think the only other case is fairly new, and that's Ghostbusters 3 happening.
I don't think we talk about that.
I can't really think of any other series that I can't really think of any other series that have done that kind of pivot. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes, and if this might set a precedent. I don't know. But I always hesitate in saying this about my content or my approach, but it's the best way of explaining it is, I guess I look at games in a slightly more auteur theory, in terms of like an academic lens, and that's the creators are very important to the creation of it, because a lot of people usually approach game analysis from a very removed, I'm just gonna observe the game as I see it and as I play it, but I always feel it's very worth it looking at the creators and what their inspirations were, and looking through interviews and what they said they were setting out to do, because that can always very much inform your understanding of what the game actually is.
Yeah, I think that's... Wow, I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. I'm hoping that you can grow your channel off this sort of new content you're trying to go forth with, and hopefully more people will be able to see your content, because like your retrospectives alone, they've dragged in a decent amount of views, and I can guarantee you a lot of those people are probably people who don't watch a lot of Devil May Cry content, but they do enjoy playing the games. They saw this and went, hey, let's go check it out, and then they probably ended up subscribing. So I'm hoping when you do stuff like this in the future, you'll be able to continue to drag in more people to start seeing that, hey, you have a lot more content like this. It's coming out for other content too, not just Devil May Cry. Speaking of Devil May Cry, you do seem to have a pretty, I don't know if I want to say like a big influence, but you definitely have a lot of interest in Devil May Cry. And I kind of want to talk more about like Devil May Cry 5. So far, what do you think of Devil May Cry 5 before the games even come out?
I'm very interested to see where it's gonna go. Like many people, I don't think that's like a nuanced take there, but it's interesting that we're getting like a 3-character set in like the main game, because that's something that usually we get in like, the special edition. The one that I'm very curious about, and I think a lot of fans are hesitant about, we're still kind of seem to be uncertain about it. I get this question sometimes, is like, what's your thoughts on V, and do you think V is going to be the big problem of 5? And I can see where that comes from, because V's gameplay that we've seen looks very slow, a little lumbering. He doesn't really have like a run. You're using summonings to attack, and that feels very counterintuitive to how Devil May Cry games have historically played, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I have trust in Itsuno. Like, I trust that he knows how to make a character fun. So I'm gonna wait and see how it plays. There is cool mechanics going on there, so I have no problem with that. I guess the pacing of his gameplay is the thing that causes me a little bit of hesitance, but Dante's gameplay looks fucking awesome. Really excited to try Nero's Devil Breaker, and really curious to see where the story is going to go, because if those original leaks are anything to go by, this is the end of the Sons of Sparta storyline. I don't know if that'll be the end of Dante as a character, but it'll kind of maybe wrap up the story that started with 3 and continues with 1, and so on and so forth. So that'll be a really interesting climax, if anything.
Right. I definitely agree with what you're talking about when it came to the 3-person aspect. It's definitely odd that they're going for a story with 3 different characters, and if the original leaks were correct, I remember hearing something about there being like 10 missions per character, and that's a lot, especially if they're going to be like intertwining missions like the co-op mode seems to be hinting at, which a co-op mode, more on that later. That seems kind of odd to me, honestly. But I am definitely curious to see how Capcom plans on making 3 separate characters work for one storyline. If the game is to take place 15 hours like Hideaki Itsuno said, then I guess I can see them giving a story for 3 separate characters and having them intertwine their stories together within a 15-minute or 15-hour, dear God, 15-hour gameplay loop. So I don't know. We'll have to see more on that.
I can see that. That would make sense mathematically, if we want to be technical, because I would say DMC4 is about 9 hours, give or take, depending on how you blast through it. That's 21 missions, I think. So like mathematically, it's like, yeah, it's like if every character has about 10 missions to their name, that would be 15, 16 hours. So like I can actually see that being truthful when you like add it all up.
Right.
I'm not sure how they're gonna like cross mingle and how they're gonna overlap. I don't even know how that co-op function's gonna work, because I don't get the sense that it's going to be designed around that. I don't feel the mission structure is built around that, but I'd be happy to be wrong, because I got the sense the co-op mode's just like a fun extra
yeah
thing.
We've seen some gameplay of the co-op mode on their Twitter. Somebody pointed out to me, it's like you'll be on one structure, and out in the distance, you'll see another character fighting some enemies. Like, let's say out there, you're playing Nero, and then you see on the other side, there's someone playing V. Well, in a later mission, you're going to be playing V doing that same thing, but it basically, as far as I know, it like pre-records what somebody did, and it just copy and paste that over for that V guy to do. Which, at the same time, that's kind of the same as just an AI fighting enemies, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's honestly the best comparison. And I'm gonna sound like a game journalist here. That's a very Dark Souls thing to do.
Yeah, I've been hearing that too. Actually, yeah.
Because Dark Souls, you have basically like the phantoms, where you like kind of see like where a character died, or you'll be in like Majula or what have you, and you'll just see like ghosts kind of just wandering around, and it's like a lot of the time it's like, oh, they have really fucking cool armor. Like, oh shit, I wish I knew how to like get that specific armor set. I think it's kind of that. It makes more sense from like a game architecture sense, because I was gonna say I feel it would be very exhausting for the system to have to render an entire map, and then on top of that having another character in game with you, like co-op wise, because it would be like a lot for the system itself to run, and then also for the, your internet connection to make sure they're like not lagging and jumping around. So it's like, no, it'll just be recording someone else's footage when they're playing that mission, and then it's just as a nice little, I hate to say the word set piece, but just as like a nice little extra thing. It's like, oh hey, like, over in that area in this specific time frame, Nero's mission is going on over there, so you can see, another player fighting over there. It's not currently happening, but it did happen.
Yeah, and I think that there is definitely going to be more to it, because for the way that I've seen Capcom advertising this new mode. At first it was subtle, but now the way they're showing it off on their Twitter with these sort of tips, it seems like it wasn't that much of just a tacked on mode. So I do want to see if there's more behind this mode that they haven't exactly hinted at yet, because it definitely does seem to have some sort of potential with it.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that for sure.
If there's anything I gotta say for people who haven't played the demo yet, it feels a lot like Devil May Cry 4 with Nero, except I've said this way too many times, but it's the only way to describe this. He just feels more sluggish, and not really in a negative way. He feels like he hits in a more heavy way, but not only does
I've heard the term deliberate. He has a very deliberate way of
yes,
moving.
because not only does it take him longer for him to execute his animations, but they feel like and they look like they hit harder, but also it takes longer for you to activate animations or combos than it did in Devil May Cry 4. Because in Devil May Cry 4, there's a huge window for activating the combos. That's why you see like these wicked-ass videos about performing combos and stuff. But I feel like that might be a little bit harder with DMC5 because the window of opportunity to perform combos is a little bit more strict this time around. For Nero, at least. I haven't seen the other two characters or played them.
I get the sense that it was designed less with like the combo mad players in mind and more, I don't want to say even casual, it's just players that don't play in that way. Like I think they designed it not with the combo mad type players not in mind, because I know DMC streamers have been going like crazy trying to pull certain stuff in the demo, and it's either A, that thing isn't in the demo, or it's just they can't execute that specific thing because the like animation frames don't exactly allow it, because it's like, oh, like between Nero's like basic attack animation and him setting up to do another one, it's like the timing is different, so they can't do all the crazy bullshit they usually do. I think even jump canceling isn't even in the game. I know Vash was going crazy trying to get that working, and it's like, no, it's just not in the demo. Seemingly, we don't know if it will be or if it might be something you have to purchase, but it's currently not in the demo.
I've been hearing Digital Foundry I've been watching Digital Foundry when they make their videos over the new Devil May Cry demo, and it's pretty impressive how far they've been able to come with a Devil May Cry game. Like, it went from like this anime look to this more realistic look, and it's pulled it off pretty well, if I do say so myself. And it's awesome how well they've been able to optimize the game as well. I'm curious to see how it's going to run on PC.
Yeah, especially where, you can like up your resolution and do a lot more like tweaking and modding and what have you. I'm not sure how people did it with RE7. I think that would probably be your best like baseline to see how much people could do, because it's using the same engine that RE7 used and RE2 Remake is using. So those are kind of the, I guess, metrics you can use to kind of guess how it's going to be. But is PC's coming out the same day as like everything else, right?
Yes. It is.
Okay, because Capcom's weird about releasing stuff on the PC at the same time.
Yeah, they did that with Monster Hunter World. They had to release that one later because I guess they had to separately build on that one. And that one is still struggling. They get updates later than consoles, which for most games it's vice versa. So that's definitely thrown me off a little bit.
It's just that Japanese developers typically don't develop with PC in mind. It's always kind of an afterthought, namely with Capcom and Platinum, really. And I want to say Square Enix is kind of in the same boat, where they typically make console games, and then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we can make a PC thing for the Westerners, because as far as I know, PC and Steam isn't as popular over there. I could be wrong on that, but I always get the sense that Steam and just general PC stores don't do as well.
They have like their own NetEase thing over there, if I remember correctly.
That too. I think they have their own like game store. PC game store there.
Yeah, that stuff's I don't even want to touch on that topic. I'm gonna get so much wrong there.
Yeah, same. Like I'm speaking very much from like from what I understand, but I could very well be wrong as well.
I mean, I can vouch for Nier Automata, like you said with Platinum Games. They added that the same time as PlayStation 4. They put it on Steam, and that is one of the worst ports I have played for a AAA game of all time. Like, it's still not fixed to this day. You have to get this unofficial patch from a modder just to fix the game, get it to work. Thank God they had to Xbox so I could play it on a...
That's why for the longest time I was saying, like, oh, like, you know, like, PS4 is so good, like, in terms of exclusives. You got Bloodborne, you got Nier Automata, you got this, you got that, and people would be like, well, you can get Nier Automata on Steam, and it's like, can you really, though?
Can you really?
Do you want to?
So anyways, I'm gonna kind of navigate back into Devil May Cry 5 real quick. V. So you talked about V for just a little bit, but what is because my opinion is still up in the air for him. So like, for instance, without even getting into his gameplay alone, him as a character, it's odd because just the way the trailers portray him, everyone's just saying he's gonna betray, he looks like a betraying kind of person, and I never really wanted that because it seems so predictable, like I could see it coming from like a mile away. What's your opinion on this character so far?
I think the trailers are kind of making a red herring of that. I don't think that that's the, like, maybe that might be the, like, origins of his character, but I don't think that's going to be the end point of the character, if that makes sense. It would be...
Right, that's kind of similar how I feel about that.
It'd be very weird, but also very interesting if they made him, like, a betrayer at the end, because that'd be an odd character to choose to make a character around, like an actual playable character around. That'd be like if they made Trish playable in Devil May Cry 1. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're eventually playing a character that's going to betray your protagonist. So, that, I don't know, that feels very weird.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, it feels a lot like how Virgil portrayed Dante in DMC, because it was so out of left field. Like, they were designing the game and it was working well and they had this bond. They're like, oh shit, wait, Virgil's supposed to be a bad guy. Just throw it in at the end. Like, it seemed so random the way they did it. I don't feel it was
random. I just feel they poorly set it up. Because anybody who knows these games knows Virgil, you know, is kind of your antagonist, so to speak. Or at least your, your counter. But I just think they did a very poor job telegraphing that is how I've always seen it. They could have done a better job at, like, setting that heel turn up, but that's its own thing. With V, I think it's going to be kind of a reverse Trish thing, where it's his betrayal is going to be set up very early on, and then it's not going to happen, and then he's going to be more of a character as he progresses, as he tries to figure out who he is.
I think overall there might be some sort of betrayal in there just by the way the trailers are portraying it, but like you said, at the same time, it does feel like they're trying to navigate the audience towards a certain perspective. And I think when the game actually comes out, hopefully it won't be too much like Trish, because again, that might be too predictable, but I think there's definitely something more going on than what we're being led onto for this character. I mean, I don't have really that much of an interest for him, because if right now I'm stuck with this predictable thing right now for the way he's been shown, and also his gameplay, as you mentioned earlier, looks kind of slow and definitely different than usual.
I'm interested in getting my hands on him just to see how it's going to feel, but I'm still more excited about Nero and Dante just flat out, because I'm experienced with them, so it's mostly just like, how are they going to be? Like, what's their, like, what's Dante's fist weapons this time? Balrog. I'm like, I really want to play with Balrog and Cerberus and stuff. And then I see V's gameplay and I'm like, oh, that's neat. Like, we'll see how that goes. It's got a Chaos Legion kind of gameplay looking, so that might be fun.
Right, yeah. It looks like they took Lucifer, the weapon from Devil May Cry 4, and they started turning it into a character. And from that perspective, yeah, I could see something coming out of this, because he also controls these, like, summoning creatures as well. So we'll have to wait on that one. There's only so much info we can get before the game comes out. And then, as you talked about just now, Dante definitely has a huge arsenal of weapons, and I know a lot of people who are definitely curious to see what else he's going to be doing with the sort of stuff. Like, what's it called? Foss hat or something like that? Okay, so I'm going to use this, like, quickly segue into the next conversation. So a lot of people have been talking about the microtransactions, and the Faust hat uses red orbs. Now, there's a lot of different stances I've seen with these microtransactions because they use red orbs, and it's now the only economy used in the game. It's used for buying skills, it's used for reviving, it's now used for this Faust hat ability, and overall, it seems like it's sketchy because it's being added from the game from the start. But overall, what do you think about these microtransactions? Are you against them? Do you not care about them? You think they're going to be good for Capcom business-wise?
A kind of, I guess, fence-sitting statement for the red orbs. I don't think it's going to be the problem people make it out to be, because from what we've been hearing and from what we've been seeing, the game is very generous with red orbs. So similar to 4, I doubt anybody's going to ever need to, in any sort of way, to purchase red orbs. It's not something I imagine is going to be needed. In terms of reviving yourself, one, you ideally shouldn't need to revive yourself that often. Even if you're a new player, like, that shouldn't be that much of a common problem, but some people don't play as well, that's fine. But there is still gold orbs as far as I understand in the game. It's not entirely replacing the revive mechanic using red orbs. I think it's just more of a option for you. And even then you don't have to use red orbs to revive yourself at that point. You can just restart the mission. Like, it's not a necessary thing. Same with the Faust hat. It's not using a giant amount of red orbs. I feel it's more of a way to grind red orbs more than anything else once you're a bit more skilled. I do hope, for Capcom's sake, just so people don't jump on it too much, there is a way to practice with the Faust hat and not have to spend red orbs. Like, if you take it into like the practice room,
that training mode.
Yeah, if you go into training mode, I hope there's a way to, like, not invest your own red orbs into using it to learn the mechanics, because that'd be a little bit more generous for the players, just not to have to basically spend to train.
Right. I have no doubts they'll probably implement that, and quite frankly, I don't think it's going to be as bad as some people think it is to be, because we kind of live in this era in the game industry where we've had so many bad games from these other AAA companies. It just puts a sour taste in our mouth when it comes to any sort of microtransactions. But for this, it is kind of off-putting that you have to use red orbs to revive, but again, like you said, I don't think it's going to be that bad of a thing. I don't think it even really costs that much to revive in the first place.
No, I think it's like 3,000 or something. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but because I think, if I remember correctly, there's also like a range of revives that you can get depending on how much you're investing into it. Like, you can get like a 30% revive, a 70% revive, or a full health revive, depending on how much you spend. So even then, you're getting kind of options on how much you want to invest. It's like, if you're near the end of the mission and you're at the last bit of the boss, you don't need a full revive. It's like, just spend the 30% one. I don't know if that's changed. I just remember that being shown off a few months ago. I am still of the opinion that I'd rather Capcom not put it in there, because they don't put it in there for no reason. As much as some fans want to be like, oh, it's not a problem, like, blah, blah, blah. Capcom is putting it in there for a reason, though. It's because they're hoping you buy it, and it is very suspect. I hope it's a situation where some Capcom exec's like, you got to put microtransaction in there, and Itsuno and the devs are like, oh, okay, how can we put it in there and it not be intrusive? I would have preferred if they just made some more character costumes. Like, I'd be totally fine if it was something that was like just aesthetics. Like, just give us aesthetics, give us more music tracks, like, just stuff like that. Just put stuff in like that in, and I think people are less prone to outrage at it.
Right.
But something that's like a currency gets people very suspect. We've become very suspect as a consumer base.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. I think that's the same problem that people are having, the fact that it's part of a currency that you spend on several different items, and so immediately it's easy to jump to the conclusion that there's going to be some sort of problem with the microtransactions when beforehand you could just use
like the game's gonna push you towards buying more, and I don't get the feeling that that's what the game's gonna be.
Yeah, I gotcha. I agree there. So kind of want to go into back in your videos, you've been doing retrospectives on the DMC series, which some people would think is kind of sketchy to do because it's not the most beloved of the franchise. So after watching your DMC videos and you kind of went more in-depth analysis of how it happened, what is your overall opinion on the game itself? Not with like the development of how it was forced to happen, but like when you just played the game, what is your opinion on the game overall?
So I've been seeing this opinion surprisingly a lot, and I think the fandom in general has kind of come to terms with this statement. It's a fine action game. It's fine. Its biggest problem is that it has the name DMC on it. Self-removed from that, it's good. It's got some interesting mechanics to it. There's some cool ideas going on. It's just when you see the name Devil May Cry, it just doesn't fulfill those expectations well. But I do hope Itsuno is going to bring at least a few of those ideas back into 5. But for the most part, it's like, yeah, this is acceptable.
Yeah, because for the most part, I gotta say that I don't think it was as bad of a game that people make it out to be. I mean, it is kind of sad that after getting 1 through 4 as its own series and then getting this game, which definitely changed how the game was originally made. The whole style was different. As you brought up, one of the developers of the game said it was a different sense of cool from back in the day, what was considered cool. But I think the game itself, like the gameplay, the core mechanic of how it works is probably one of the best core mechanics I've seen, because it's fun. It's just plain fun. Now, the story is kind of just loose, I guess, is one way of saying it. I mean, even as not talking as a hardcore DMC guy, just looking at as just a storyline, it was kind of bare bones. It was lacking a little bit. It wasn't the worst thing I had ever seen.
But even then, people rag on the story, and even I criticize the story for what it is. But at the same time, it's like, aside from 3, like all the Devil May Cry stories have never really been great strength wise. Like the stories have never been there. Like, this is what you come to a Devil May Cry game for. So I always feel like the criticisms levied against DMC sometimes are slightly what's the term I'm looking for? Bad faith. There's sometimes some bad faith criticisms levied at it that kind of seem to ignore the original series.
That's true. That's completely true. It's kind of biased in that retrospect, and I think that I'm not here to persuade people go play DMC. That's not what's here at all. I'm just saying that I think it's a fine game, and I'm glad that recently it's been getting a little bit more accepted by people who wouldn't do so before, because it's no longer the most recent game. Because Devil May Cry 5 is coming out, it's like, hey, here you go, here is the true sequel.
It's no longer the end of the series, so people are much more ready to accept that it's just whatever, like leave it alone. And that's actually why, like, I was so fortunate to have DMC5 like announced when I was finishing that second video, because it worked well for the conclusion I came to, where it's like, let's just, put down our pitchforks. Like, 5's coming out. We don't need to keep this like hate campaign.
Pure
for this
coincidence.
Like, Ninja Theory has moved on. They're doing their own thing now. Like, Itsuno's back. He's making 5. We can all just kind of, just relax. Like, we don't need to continue being upset about this. Like, you don't have to like it. Everybody's allowed their opinion. Everybody's allowed to like what they don't like, or like what they like and not like what they don't like. But it's stupid to keep getting angry about it.
Right. We don't have to like it, but we don't have to exactly hate on it for the sake of hating on it anymore to give it the attention that it needed beforehand, I guess. I don't really know what to say much on that.
Don't have to go on Ninja Theory's Twitter every time they post something and make a shitty comment about DMC. Because when I was researching into that, I still found that on their Twitter.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but I remember I looked onto their Twitter because I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find Tamim's Twitter because it was deleted quite a while back. But I saw someone making a shitty comment about DMC when they made a tweet about something else. And I'm just like, God damn it, guys. Like, let it go. Like, seriously.
We're like 2 or 3 games away from DMC when it comes to that company. I don't know. It's kind of weird that people just don't want to let it go. But I think now it's going to be a little bit easier for people to do that in the future.
It's going to be easier. It's going to be easier for people, and it's going to be easier to call out people that are being that way. Because they're going to be less justified in doing so. Not that they ever were justified, but it's like, dude, like, you know, that's an old game. Like, nobody cares anymore. It's not the killer of DMC it was.
Yeah, and we gotta say that it's hopefully it won't have as bad of an influence in the future. Because I've been seeing articles about DMC 2. I don't know exactly if that's gonna happen. I personally don't think so, but I think it was just a conversation Hideaki had. I don't think that's something that's ever really gonna happen in the future.
Yeah, I think it was just he just was like, oh, after DMC 1, I was ready to make 2, but that didn't happen, so we made 5. I think that's about as far as the conversation went.
Right. That's probably why he had a few influence inside Devil May Cry 5 with some DMC hints in there. But speaking of new games, we've been hearing that this is allegedly the last game in the Son of Sparta storyline, as well as Hideaki's last game. However, Capcom has gone forward to say that it's possible we might be getting more Devil May Cries in the future, but that seems to be that it won't be Son of Sparta related and won't have Hideaki. How do you feel on a game like that?
I don't know what the current talent pool at Capcom looks like, especially with action game in this fashion. So I'd be very apprehensive about someone taking over for Itsuno. Obviously Itsuno took over for Kamiya, so it's not like it's impossible. It's not like, oh, one person alone can do the series, but it's obvious that, you know, he and his team are the best in Capcom of doing it. Hopefully if they were to make another game, it would be someone that worked under Itsuno and, you know, learned from him. Like, hopefully he's been, you know, grooming a successor, so to speak. In terms of this being the final Sons of Sparta game, I know a lot of people get very fidgety when I make this mention. I kind of find that interesting. I think it would be interesting to kind of maybe pass the torch from Dante to another character. As much as I like Dante, as much as I like his gameplay, it would be interesting to see him take a more mentor role like they tried to do with 4. But it's hard to see how that'll go, how fans will accept it, because even with 4, as much as people have come to like 4, when it was first coming out, people were very anxious about a new character coming in. So I think that's always going to be people's initial reaction. But in terms of the game itself, I think it's really interesting kind of wrapping up his story, especially if Virgil's coming back, because it'll kind of be the end to their story, their personal story. And after that, it's like, well, what do you really do with Dante? It's like, give the story to someone else and let them kind of have their own arc, and let Dante kind of just be in the back as a kind of mentor. Or fuck it, you know what? I've said this for years. Where's the fucking prequel game of Sparta? We need the MGS3 to Devil May Cry. We need the big boss story, or not the big boss. We need the boss story of Sparta.
I agree. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to have some sort of prequel to the game. I personally feel that the universe is rich enough, it's interesting, we know enough details that I think we could go ahead and establish completely new characters and completely new storylines within the Devil May Cry universe without having ties to the Son of Sparta storyline. I know it's going to be hard to accept something like that. I mean, hell, if you really wanted to, it doesn't even have to have the same title as Devil May Cry, but it's such a unique universe that I don't want that aspect to go away. I'm fine with Dante wrapping up his story and walking off in the sunset and him being a beloved character. That's cool, but I mean, it wouldn't hurt to add somebody new in there or different. It could be something completely different, but I like the aspects of the world, and there's so much new and different stuff that could be added to it, especially with the way they shoot cinematics specifically within this game.
Yeah, and also that this doesn't surprise me coming from Itsuno, because when I was looking into researching DMC and why they rebooted, he originally said like, look, I don't want DMC fans to get tired and bored of it. I don't want to constantly make the same game with the same engine with the same people and it to just be the same thing. I want it to always be fresh and new. And I think, maybe shifting the protagonist role slightly between games might be part of that. Because, yeah, it's like once you kind of wrap up a character's storyline, like, yeah, pass it on to another character. And I think we've been seeing this a little bit more from Japanese devs because off the top of my head alone, like Yakuza 6 was the same thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Yakuza series, but it was the same thing where they're like, this is the last game with this protagonist. There's going to be probably more Yakuza games coming later, but it's going to have a different like main character. Like it's the Kiryu is no longer the focus.
That sort of stuff works too because it's got an interesting enough universe that you could implement different characters into there, and you can still get a Yakuza story without the same character.
Yeah. It's like there's plenty to do there. Like hell's yeah, like boring kind of to constantly rely on the same characters when there's potential to tell new and interesting stories. You can still have those characters around. Like don't get me wrong. But it's just have them in the background as like a mentor character or like a fun cameo or something, or shit, somehow make them the antagonist of some sort. Like that's kind of what they started with DMC4. That was like the first scene you get is Dante as the antagonist, and then it's like, oh shit, what happened? What's going on? And
plot twist.
Yeah, plot twist. Holy shit! Like he's the villain of the game, and that was a really cool way of doing 4. So yeah, I'm totally okay with it. I know fans. Anytime I mention the idea that 5 might be the end of Dante's story, people get very antsy, like, "Oh, Dante's the face of the series. They can't make a game without him." And I'm like, I think they could, but I'm not gonna. I don't work at Capcom, so I can't say.
We'll have to wait and see what they can do.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got the talent, but
we're gonna have to wait for just DMC5 to come out in of itself before we start speculating on what like 6 might be.
Right. That's fair. That's completely fair. Now, with everything we've talked about today, do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to bring up?
I'm excited for Devil May Cry 5 and Resident Evil 2 Remake. I'm happy Capcom's ever so slowly pulling themselves out of the dirt, even if they have some trip-ups. And I say this with all the love in the world. I hope the fandom as a whole kind of calms down slightly. I know the fandom's kind of always on a hair trigger, so to speak, anytime something happens, or anytime a journalist misquotes something or misunderstands something. I always see on Twitter the first reaction is for everybody to freak out.
It's okay, we're all chill.
Just calm down. It's okay. 5's coming out. It's gonna be good. It's hopefully gonna be great. Don't assume the GAMS journalists are out to get you. They're not. They're just reporting what they know and what they understand, and sometimes they might not understand it from a fan's perspective, and that's understandable. Correct them where need, but don't freak out. And yeah, that's the big one.
I think that's completely fair. People are definitely scared of game journalists nowadays because they can all put their own spins on stories. There's so many more sources. There's more bias-based stories. But I think at the end of the day, Devil May Cry 5 is about to come out, and we're going to see how it is. Some of us have rose-tinted glasses, but some of us are also like, you know what? I think we're ready to see how this is going to pan out. It might not be the best, but at the same time, I still think it's going to be a good game either way, even if it's not a game of the year, for example.
Go in with realistic expectations, and you won't be disappointed.
Exactly. That goes for anything. Even getting a grade on a test paper, I suppose. So guys, that is it. I want to thank you all for tuning into this podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed Foxcade. I will have all of his information linked in the description box below. Be sure to go check him out. He has absolutely amazing in-depth content. Foxcade, thank you once again for taking the time to join me in my podcast. I want to thank you all for watching Long Time, but not Hard Time. Now see you guys next time.
Later.